In the name of God, the all-loving, all-caring provider and protector of all creation. There is a genocide in Gaza. And the modern world has made it impossible to do anything about it. And when I say do anything, I don't mean protest on the weekend. I mean really, genuinely do something about it. There are 2 billion Muslims on this planet. And they're worried more about their bills. If they're in the West, their mortgages, which are haram, by the way. Their electricity bill, their water bill, their grocery bill. I know we don't really like Andrew Tate. A lot of you don't. I do. Because if you listen carefully to what he's saying, he's right. A lot of the time, he's right. That we're living in some kind of fake reality. It's wage slavery. We're slaves to the system. 40-hour work week. You get a check every week or 2 weeks or at the end of the month. And you're living for the purpose of making it to the next month so that you can pay your bills, your mortgage, maybe your car. This is why usury, taking loans with interest or giving loans with interest is haram. Because it ties you to that debt. You become a slave to your debt. And the modern world has made us all slaves. There's a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Ta'isa abd dirham, Ta'isa abd dinar. I don't really know how to translate that correctly. But it's, may he be miserable. Or I think really I would read it that he is miserable. The slave of the dinar, which is the currency that they used to use. The gold dinar. Basically, if you're a slave to money, you're miserable. Because you're tied down to something that's supposed to be a means of you doing other things. But in reality, 2 billion Muslims are slaves to money. Isn't that strange? Being a slave to your tool. Your tool is supposed to be something that you use. But the modern world has made it so that we're all slaves to the system. So we can churn out more money, more taxes, and that's it. Until you're 65 years old and you can get yourself a pension, you're a slave. You're a slave to the system. And I haven't quite figured out how you break free of that. Except the way that God says himself. That you choose to only be a slave to him. Which means that when you need to tap out of the system, you tap out. Even if it doesn't make sense financially, you tap out. And if 2 billion Muslims were to strike from work, the entire financial system would come to a halt. And we could literally force world leaders to end the genocide. But not just end the genocide, we could change the world. We could make demands. We could have a whole host of demands. Like maybe multinational corporations should start paying taxes to African countries. And it would force multinational corporations to listen to us. And it would force our leaders to listen to us. Maybe we could demand a khilafah. Maybe we could demand that all the Muslim countries unite under a caliph. We could do that if we were actually believers. But are we? If you don't really believe that God is the provider, then you behave exactly as Muslims behave. If you don't really believe that God is in control of the universe, then you would behave as 2 billion Muslims behave. Because if you really believe that God is the creator of everything and he owns the entire universe, and you knew that if you were to strike from work, you would stop the entire system in its tracks. And God would find a way, well, not find, God would make a way to sort out your bills. Because you wouldn't die. You wouldn't go hungry. All of the food is still there. People could share. They could go to the mosque and make plans. Men could go to the mosque, men and women could go to the mosque 5 times a day and come up with a plan to end the genocide. But striking from work would do all of that for you. If men were just to stop going to work for long enough to go to the mosque 5 times a day and turn around to the man praying next to him and say, what are we going to do about Gaza? But we don't, because we're slaves to the system. And we're going to continue to be slaves to the system until someone somewhere Andrew Emery Tate III, you know that if he called for a global strike, men would listen. But instead, here I am, some random hijabi on the internet. I'm just trying to get somebody famous's attention. He could literally end the genocide just by calling for a global strike. Men would follow. Men would listen. Instead, some random hijabi on the internet that nobody cares about. If we were to strike from work, if enough of us, doesn't have to be 2 billion, if enough of us, 1 million of us, maybe a few million, I don't know how many it's going to take for it to make a little blip on the financial system of the world. And then they would pay attention and they would put pressure on politicians and they would end the genocide, because the US cares more about tax dollars than it cares about lives. And so does the Israeli government. Anyway, that's all for now. And by the way, I am striking. I resigned from my job. Maybe some men somewhere might actually do something.